What's up, NBA fan? What's up, all sports fans? This your boy JB, host of the Behind the Bench podcast network and channel. Giving a shout out to the rest of the crew: Shy, Kelvin, Jermaine, KB Film Room, and Big Dog Talk Sports. That's right. Everyone's tuning in today. Thank you for supporting Behind the Bench. Subscribe to the channel. Help make this show the best that it can be on this grand October day. Now, I know I talk about this franchise a lot, that I've been talking about a lot, but there's a reason. There is a reason, man. Like, if everything was on the up and up, man, you know, where the team operated and existed like it always did, I wouldn't be making these videos, man, because as a fan of the NBA, you know, even during the years of their glory or exemplified their true greatness, and I'm not necessarily talking about championship season. I'm just talking about, you know, the way the franchise built itself and established itself. You know, it's the reason why it became so successful. It was not an accident, you know, but, you know, I was a fan of a lot of teams, man, you know, like the run that the Houston Rockets had in 1995, man. I was caught up in that. Or, you know, what Milwaukee did 4 years ago, you know, or what Dirk accomplished in 2011. You know, the Philadelphia 76ers, you know, during the Dr. J years, man. You know, it's always examples. And, you know, Michael Jordan, what he accomplished in his career, man. You know, you come to respect, you know, all the great players at some point, you know what I'm saying? Even if they are your rivals, you know what I'm saying? But the way this franchise is spoken of in the current landscape, there's a lot of misnomers and misinformation and a lot of misleading statements that are being made about this franchise. I came across this cat recently where he said, well, you know, the reason why the Lakers were so successful during the 80s because they was able to, you know, cheat the system to get Magic Johnson and build up Showtime. And see, this is what happens when what he's accusing the past circumstance of being is actually been taking place over these past 15 years. And so when things become volatile, right, where you see the problems staring right before you, you want to tag everything with the past when the blood, sweat, and tear was brought forth on that court by so many great players that built this league to become first rate. You see what I'm saying? To establish itself as the premier basketball league around the globe. And the Lakers, as well as the Celtics, helped establish that standard during the 60s. Then it carried over to the 70s, where franchises like the Knicks broke through and became prominent, became champions. And other great franchises. They were brought forth from the ABA. They merged into the NBA. And then you had the golden age of the 80s. It carried over to the 90s, the 2000s. We've seen a lot of great basketball in each decade. But when it comes to this franchise right now, something's missing. I believe it's in a state of flux. And I did some research and see over these past 7 years, that's really all I've been doing is researching the history of the game just to validate what I always believed or even what I grew up watching and put the memory, right? So what I'm getting at is, man, when they say the Lakers have always relied on bringing forth superstars from other teams, it's really an exaggeration and it's a misnomer. Because if you really think about it, they're really only talking about 3 players. Before all this started and we was hit with the hurricane in 2018, they're really only talking about 3 players, people. They're talking about Wilt Chamberlain, they're talking about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and they're talking about Shaquille O'Neal. When they acquired Wilt Chamberlain in 1968, Wilt Chamberlain, now he played like about 13, 14 seasons, right? He retired in 1974. So due to medical advancements, being able to help players recover from injury with better success today and yesterday, that's actually a good thing. That's a good thing. I have no issue with that. But you can't penalize players of the past who didn't have the opportunity to prolong their career with advanced medical procedures or whatnot to recover from major injuries. What I'm saying is, Wilt Chamberlain was on the downside, on the back of his prime. He was no longer in his absolute prime. He played for 5 seasons and retired in 1974. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar really only played for 2 franchises his career, the Milwaukee Bucks and the Los Angeles Lakers. They acquired Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in 1975. From 1975, from that point, they didn't acquire another superstar beyond the draft. They didn't acquire another superstar via trade or free agency until Shaquille O'Neal, and that was in 1996. So we're talking about 21 years. 21 years. So the success of the franchise from 1975 to 1996 was established primarily through the draft. And then even when they brought Shaquille O'Neal as a free agent, he decided to sign with the Lakers after watching, this was from his own words, after Jerry West showed Shaquille O'Neal a workout video of Kobe Bryant. That's what sealed the deal. And the draft took place prior to free agency. So Kobe was already a drafted player selected by the Lakers. They acquired the draft rights. They traded Vlade Divac to acquire the draft rights to bring in Kobe Bryant at 18 years old. Okay. So you can't succeed at the level that the Lakers did by relying on outside players. That's for any franchise. Oh, Lord. And I've been doing research and research and research. I just did some research this morning. Now, to show that it's a misnomer that the outside players that the Lakers brought in were the driving force of the championship runs, if you go back to even the Minneapolis Lakers, right? When the franchise started in Minneapolis. Well, probably the original superstar of the NBA was George Mikan, right? When the franchise was founded, the driving force was George Mikan. And then Clyde Lovellette. And they won 5 championships. I think it was 1948, 1949, and then like 51, 52, 53, something like that. Even with Will Chamberlain, the driving force of the historic 72 championship squad that won 69 games and then set an all-time record in professional team sports by winning 33 consecutive games during the regular season. The driving force of that team was one of their own, Gail Goodrich, who was drafted by the Lakers, I believe, in 1965, 1966. And he was drafted out of UCLA. And when UCLA started their run of winning like 10 national championships, led by Coach John Wooden, Gail Goodrich was on their team. The first 2 championships of UCLA. And he was the driving force behind the 1972 championship squad that featured, along with Gail Goodrich, of course, Will Chamberlain, Jerry West. And Elgin Baylor retired like 9 or 10 games into that season. Okay. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was acquired via trade in 1975. Right? They went to the playoffs with Kareem as the bona fide number 1 player on the team during the late 70s. But with Kareem on the team, they didn't start their championship run until they brought in and drafted one of their own in Magic Johnson. Even with Shaquille O'Neal in uniform, right? When he was known as the Big Diesel, with him in uniform, they didn't start their championship run until one of their own came of age in Kobe Bryant. And then when they started their rebuild in 2004, they didn't do it with Shaquille O'Neal. They did it with one of their own in Kobe Bryant. And Shaquille O'Neal was traded to the Miami Heat. What I'm trying to exemplify and show, there is a deeper connection with your own. Representing your organization and your team as the franchise player. And that's what the Lakers are missing right now. They've been missing it since all this started with the hurricane of 2018. They traded for Anthony Davis, but during the whole ride with AD on the team, he was never considered the franchise player. And he's gone. And I know there's a lot of excitement about Luka Doncic, 26 years old. People say he can lead the team for the next 10 years, but you can't predict that far out. Not in this business. They trying to suggest that they building the future around Luka, but the whole point and the reality is the future was already mortgaged away when they brought the hurricane to the franchise. That's why when I hear that, it goes through one ear and not the other. And matter of fact, I don't even let it travel through the first ear. And this is what I'm getting at, people. They are basically winging it. It always looks good when they talk it up before the season starts. It always looks good. But I'm finna prove something. Now check this out. As I said, there's a reason why this franchise became the standard bearer of the NBA from 1980 up until 2010, where they won 10 championships, more championships than any professional sports franchise in the 4 major sports leagues: NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL. And it goes beyond drafting players that was like number 1 picks. It goes beyond that. I'm finna prove it. As I mentioned, Gail Goodrich was on the UCLA team when they started their dominant run in college basketball. Okay. Do you realize Michael Cooper, who was drafted by the Lakers, I believe in 1979, he was the only 6 man in league history that I can recall that's ever won Defensive Player of the Year. Let me repeat that. Michael Cooper, who was the 6th man of the Lakers during the Showtime run. I believe he was drafted out of New Mexico State. I believe New Mexico State. He's the only 6th man to ever win Defensive Player of the Year. Norm Nixon, right? Norm Nixon, who was a tremendous point guard for the Lakers before they brought in Magic Johnson. And then playing alongside Magic Johnson, he won 2 championships with the Lakers. He was traded to the Clippers in 1984, and he's one of the leaders in assists, averaging over 11 points a game, storming Norman. For the Clippers, when the Clippers was, they was nowhere close to even where they are now as a franchise. Just the kicker, this is when it really started getting extra. The Lakers drafted the all-time Iron Man of professional basketball in AC Green, where he played, I think, close to 1,200 straight games in his career before he missed one. 1,200 straight games. I think it was like 1,190 something. The Iron Man setting the standard. He was drafted like low in the 1st round. Right? Oh man, it gets even sweeter. The pot gets even sweeter. Derek Fisher, man, drafted out of the University of Arkansas Little Rock. I had never heard of that school before. But guess what? What is Derek Fisher most known for? For hitting the most memorable buzzer beater game winner in the history of NBA playoff basketball. Not championship basketball, but playoff basketball. 0.4 versus the San Antonio Spurs in Game 5 of the Western Conference Semifinals. Where if the Spurs, they took a 1-point lead when Tim Duncan hit that. He was fading away when he hit that jump shot on Shaq. And he was off balance when he hit the shot and went in. And everybody thought San Antonio had it. If they go up 3-2 in this series, they probably win it in 7 at home. But out of nowhere, man, Derek Fisher hit a shot for the ages, man. 0.4. And he was drafted by the Lakers. And he made history. Michael Cooper made history. These are players who were drafted low in the 1st round, people. Low in the 1st round. B. Scott, Byron Scott. He was brought in and eventually replaced Norm Nixon in that starting 5. And he had to earn it too, man. And he got a lot of pushback his rookie year, man, because, you know, Norm Nixon was was a fixture of that franchise. So he had to prove that he was worthy of being in that starting lineup. But guess what? When he grew up as a teenager, he said he was destined to play for the Lakers, and he wound up playing for them. But it gets even deeper. Byron Scott, as a head coach of New Jersey Nets, he helped lead them to the finals in back-to-back seasons with Jason Kidd as his star point guard player in 2002 and 2003. And this was during a time where black head coaches weren't given opportunities to coach talented teams. A lot of times they was given them less heralded coaching jobs during that time. You see what I'm saying? Wait a minute, people. Andrew Bynum. Andrew Bynum, drafted out of high school in 2005, the youngest player ever drafted into the NBA, was brought forth by the Los Angeles Lakers. He was like a couple of months younger than what Kobe Bryant and LeBron James were when they were drafted into the NBA. Same age, but a couple months younger. And Andrew Bynum was the youngest player ever drafted to this league. And then eventually the NBA implemented that one and done system to where high school players can no longer enter the pros directly. Well, players could not enter the NBA directly out of high school. They put an end to that. And then last but not least, people. Last but not least. They brought forth, and I just said it a million times, they brought forth and introduced to the basketball world the original young core of the NBA. The original young core of the NBA, which fulfilled a vision, and a lot of Laker fans don't know this. They fulfilled a vision that was pursued by the late, great Dr. Jerry Buss. And I'm going to prove it. Because as they ended the direct high school entry into the pros and came with the one and done system, he knew, as well as a lot of people who followed the league, that the players who was coming into the NBA, they're young, 18 years old or 19 years old, they had the physical tools. They could jump out the gym, but they didn't have the prerequisite skill and development. You see what I'm saying? And the maturity to play at that level out the box coming to the NBA. So he envisioned an idea of creating a developmental league, which started off as the D League for developmental league, right? And he put the Lakers in position to be the first NBA franchise to own and operate directly its own developmental squad. Because he understood, since the league was becoming so reliant on bringing forth young players at that age, rather than the precedent that was established during the 80s, the 70s and 80s, where, a player had at least complete 3 years of college before entering the pros. And even before then, like during the 60s, pretty much he had to complete all 4 years of college, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Jerry West, and I believe Will Chamberlain. I believe he completed 3 years before he went pro. But on the average, 3 years of college. So he understood the importance of providing additional development for players who's pursuing a career in the NBA. And therefore, the D League came into existence. So, and that was the brainchild of Dr. Jerry Buss. And see, when you're thinking like that, when you're looking at the big picture, that's what makes you successful. That's what made the Lakers so successful. Because if you think about it, they won the title in 72, right? They didn't win another title until 1980. That's 8 years out, right? Well, Jerry Buss bought the team in 1979. So you can tell the success was directly correlated with the fact that he took over the franchise as the owner. And they start racking off them championships. So what I'm trying to say, people, is it goes way beyond the current commentary that the Lakers rely on poaching superstars. They're trying to reinforce that thought because of what's taking place over these past 7 years. I just showed you. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was traded in 1975. The last star player who they acquired in that manner via trade or free agency was 25 years out after they got, or 21 years out after they got Kareem when they signed Shaquille O'Neal. That's why we were so shocked when we got him. I forgot one. The Lakers, during the initial wave of international players into the NBA, the Lakers was one of those teams that took that leap of faith, man, and started drafting such players when they brought in one Vlade Divac out of Yugoslavia. This was right after Kareem Abdul-Jabbar retired in 1989. And right after Kareem retired and they brought in Vlade Divac, they was holding workouts. Kareem was still working out with the team. He had just retired. But he was in such great shape that he can still work out. So he's working out with Vlade Divac, getting them ready, giving them the pointers and stuff. And within 2 years, Vlade Divac, as the starting center, helped the Lakers reach the NBA Finals and upsetting the Portland Trail Blazers in the 1991 Western Conference Finals. And Vlade Divac was one of the better young centers in the league during that time. He was crafty. He can score with his back to the basket. He had solid footwork. You know, he was savvy. And then years later, you know, when he started, after he was traded to Charlotte and then eventually acquired by the Sacramento Kings, that's when he kind of started resorting to the flopping. But when he's with the Lakers, man, you know, hey, he was the starting center of the team when they went to the finals. So what I'm saying, man, this franchise was one that was always, to me, was forward thinking, man. Think about it, man. Then, here go another one. Hey, I'm sorry. When the wave of high school players started in the mid-90s, it really started like with KG when he was drafted by the Minnesota Timberwolves in 1994. But that class in 96, when they brought in Kobe Bryant at 18 years old, because he was considered more talented than KG coming out of high school, Jerry West received a lot of flack for that because he traded, one of the staple players of the franchise in Vlade Divac to acquire Kobe Bryant's draft rights to select him outright. A lot of executives around the league thought he was crazy for trading a veteran player like Vlade Divac, who was a good center. Vlade Divac was a good center in this league. To trade him, to bring in an 18-year-old, he caught a lot of flack for that, but he wasn't thinking about what Kobe was at 18, even though Kobe had all the talent in the world, but he was still 18. He was thinking about 4 years down the road. And I kid you not, man, right on the ticker, man, In his 4th year, when Kobe came of age, that's when he and Shaq won their first championship in 2000 and would eventually rack off a three-peat. And as Shaq often says, he and Kobe is the best big man, little man tandem in the history of the NBA. But it took Jerry West to take all that criticism, shun it, maintain his focus on what Kobe could become 4 years out as he develops as a player. And boom, voila, when they start winning, they went from calling Jerry West crazy to calling him a genius. This is what made the Lakers great, people. Investing in the franchise. Seeing players, being able to scout players, man, who were unsung. I'd never really heard of Derek Fisher. And then, like I said, AC Green was drafted out of, I believe, Oregon State. In 1985, he was drafted low in the first round. Byron Scott was drafted out of Arizona State. He was drafted low in the first round. These wasn't like lottery bound players that they drafted, but they kept the franchise going. They kept the run going. They kept Showtime era going. They wasn't like trading to get another superstar to keep it going. They was drafting their own. And I'll close it with this. When that cat came out that bag talking about the Lakers cheated the system to bring forth Magic Johnson and James Worthy, no, that's not what happened. Back then, when a team traded a star player, they automatically received a compensatory pick in return, a compensatory first-round pick. In 1976, I believe Gail Goodrich, he did request a trade. And he got traded to the New Orleans Jazz when the Jazz was still in New Orleans before they moved to Utah. And in return, the Lakers received the number 1 pick 3 years out. Now, you can't predict. Nobody predicted that Magic Johnson was going to be available in the 1979 draft and was going to enter the draft after only completed 2 years of college. But they put themselves in position by investing in the team. That put them in position to draft a player of that caliber. Same thing happened in 1979 when they made a trade with the Cleveland Cavaliers, and in return, they received the number 1 compensatory pick based on where those teams finished that they made the trades with. So in 1982, the Cleveland Cavaliers finished with the worst record in the league. That put the Lakers in position to get the number 1 pick, which they used to select James Worthy when they could have selected Dominique Wilkins, who was considered the more talented player, historically considered a more talented player. But James Worthy fit better with the team. You see what I'm saying? So they invested in the future. What's been going on the past 7 years is the polar opposite to that. And that's why they in flux. Because they don't have their own franchise player. Now they'll tell you that the Hurricane is the face of the franchise, but he came here to exploit all the riches of all the young talent that they had, and the draft picks to flip around to try to create another quick championship push for himself. But what he's finding out, what the Lakers are being reminded of, and these talking heads or being exposed to, you can't pull that stunt off in the Western Conference, boss. You can't. So what I'm saying is this, people. The way the Lakers are operating now is totally foreign to what made the franchise great. And that's why they keep making these moves every year. And as I keep saying, the Lakers brought forth. It's one thing to say you brought in 2-3 heralded rookies like the Lakers did post Showtime. They drafted Nick Van Exel, then Eddie Jones, and then George Lynch and Anthony Pillar. They did it over 3 consecutive drafts. So you're basically talking about 4 players. The Lakers did that and won all season. In 2017, they brought in 4 rookies: Lonzo Ball, Kyle Kuzma, Josh Hart, Thomas Bryant. Lonzo Ball healthy. Darn near got a triple-double the other night coming off the bench. He can play. The issue with Lonzo Ball is he was pushed in the league 1 year too soon. He should have been allowed to do 2 years. He'd have been more mature player coming to the league. Kyle Kuzma, 4-year play. Matter of fact, the Lakers spearheaded the movement to start drafting players with 4 years of college experience again, or 3 to 4 years college experience. They was ahead of the curve with this youth movement of the NBA. They was ahead of the freaking curve. They drafted 4 rookies in the same offseason. 4. The original young core of the NBA was brought forward by Los Angeles Lakers, where you had a whole roster of natural drafted talent. And I'm talking about where it extends out to like 12 players. That's unheard of in professional basketball. And they all gone. So what I'm saying, people, when they started their championship runs, it always was spearheaded by one of their own, dog. Not by the grand superstars who they traded for or brought in free agency. It was spearheaded by one of their own. The history's going to show it. The history's going to prove it. And then they brought forth unique gems low in the draft. The Derek Fishers, Norm Nixons, Vlade Divacs, people like that. Andrew Bynums, where he did emerge by his 3rd, 4th year. It just the injuries hurt Bynum. But there was a stretch during the 2009 season where Bynum was dropping like 22 and 15. And I was like, dang, I said, man, if he gonna do this and you got Kobe out there, and with the young bench that we had, the bench ball, I said that we'll mess around. We can go 3 straight. If he gonna do this, but the injuries always kind of held him back. So what I'm saying, man, as a lifelong Laker fan, when I put this stuff out here, man, I put it out here with purpose because this franchise is in flux. Because anytime you make all these moves, right, you bring in Luka Doncic. Now, he is a franchise player, but he's a franchise player for the Dallas Mavericks. No one ever thought that he would be traded away from the Mavericks, much less traded to the Lakers. You make all these moves, but they still gonna tell you, man, they need to make about 2-3 more moves to even be a contender. See, something's off, man. Well, they're no more than maybe a 2nd round team at best. Something's off, dog. Something's off. But see, when you build and when you break through, you're more confident. That's why when Shaq and Kobe won their first title, you kind of knew, man, like Kobe said, we refuse to lose because they went through the battles. They went through the wars. They went through the gauntlet to get to the top together. You see what I'm saying? Pat Riley set that standard, man. He started off as an assistant coach. He was promoted to head coach. And he made sure that Laker team was the best conditioned team in the league. That's why they was able to run that fast break the way they did. That didn't happen by accident. They was in tip-top military shape. You see what I'm saying? So, real knows real. Real knows real, man. And like I said, when you let go of that young core, you gave up your identity. To me, as a franchise, you can have players wearing their jersey, but there's something missing, man. And they know it. Now, it's not going to be said because of the circumstance, because it was on the team, but they know something's missing. So I just want to share this, man. I be saying this with all sincerity, dog. The history is going to show what made the franchise great. Yes, they brought in, Robert Orrs and Rick Fox and people like that. But those were like ancillary players, you know what I'm saying? They had a tremendous role with the success that we had in the early 2000s. Don't get me wrong. But they was at least with the franchise, like Robert Orr, Rick Fox was part of the Laker franchise for like 6-7 years. They were consistent presence on the team. So to this day, Robert Horry serves as a commentator for the Lakers, doing pregame, postgame show. You know what I'm saying? Lamar Odom played with the team from 2004 up until he was with the Lakers for like 7 years. So he's part of the history. Eddie Jones and Nick Van Exel played for like 6 years. The dudes they rolling up in here now, man, on average, they may last 2. Carmelo Anthony played for this team for 1 year. And years down the road, people say, man, Carmelo Anthony was on the team. They're going to be like, man, no, he wasn't. It's so fleeting. It's so fleeting. DeAndre Ayton's only signed for 2 years. But they're going to say he's the center of the future, but you only signed for 2 years. Meanwhile, your real center is playing for the Clippers. Who should have been your real center. So what I'm saying, man, this franchise is so rich, and what made them great, they have totally undermined that great history by going down this road over the past 7 years, man. And that's why I don't feel nothing. So I can break it down, man. I can talk about this for days, man. I love the franchise, man, but it's operating in direct opposition to why they became the standard franchise of the modern era since 1980. Period. At the end of the day. When you bring on a head coach, they ain't got no head coaching experience, and he will have another meltdown moment because he ain't got no head coaching experience. He just got talent on the team because of the situation, but he ain't no. Pat Riley played for the Lakers. He was part of the 72 team, so Pat Riley is a Laker. So when he took over the head coach of Ram, you felt a connection. Like, man, shit, he part of that was part of the mystique. That's part of the mystique, man. He a Laker, man. You know, hey, when Lou Walton was given the head coaching job, I was excited because I'm like, man, Lou Walton's a Laker. You know, he was part of the back-to-back championship team. And outside of Kobe Bryant, Phil Jackson said he understood the triangle offense better than anybody else on the team outside of Kobe. And they kicked him out the door. So what I'm saying is you kicking all your own out the door for the Hurricane, and that's why you in flux. I've never seen nothing like it. I just hope when all this is over, man, this is what I hope, man, and I'm gonna close it down. For all Laker fans out here who come across this, man, learn about the true history of the franchise on your own. These talking heads are not going to deliver that. That's not what they're there for. Go back and study the history. Do you realize, in closing, from 1980 to 1989, do you know they only had about 55 players in uniform during that decade? Only 55 different players over 10 years. That's an average, a turnover of 5 players a year. Now, that's normal because you're drafting players every year. You know what I'm saying? Some players you may let go. They may get older or retire or something like that. And you may bring in someone like a Bob McAdoo or Michael Thompson to play a role, or Maurice Lucas, you know what I'm saying, to be an enforcer. But your cornerstone players are your cornerstone players. From 85 to 89, they had the same starting 5. Magic, you can roll it off the tongue. Magic, Scott. No, Magic, Kareem, Worthy, Scott, AC Green. That was your starting 5 for 5 straight years. You can roll it off the tongue. It was automatic. They weren't flipping their roster over every year. So study the franchise. And what you're going to find is, man, they didn't mortgage their future off the win. They invested in their franchise. You see? And when the success came, they maintained the standard by continuing to do the same things that created the standard, which led to Pat Riley to say, right after they won the title in 87, we had a great season. But guess what? Next year, we're going to do it again. Because the standard was so deeply entrenched. It brought forth the confidence. The franchise ain't confident right now. It's being masqueraded as such. But when you always talking about trades, even after you making moves, that means you're not really confident, dog. But I tell you who is confident, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Because the Oklahoma City Thunder reminds me a lot of the Los Angeles Lakers. And I'm in it with that. So I just want to drop that golden nugget. Please leave your comments and thoughts. And as I always love to say, people, this your boy JB. The show is BTB. And it's called Behind the Bench.